On November 12, 2024, my neighbor Karen Davies locked my 5-year-old daughter inside our car and threw a burning lighter onto newspapers. As flames spread and smoke filled the car, my little girl screamed for help while Karen walked away smiling. This is how I got my revenge. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. My name is Sarah Thompson. I am 32 years old. I live with my 5-year-old daughter Lily in Willow Grove Estate in Bristol, England. I work as a child protection officer for Bristol City Council. My job is to keep children safe from dangerous people. I never thought I would need to protect my own child from our neighbor. But on November 12, 2024, everything changed. That was the day our neighbor Karen Davies tried to murder my daughter. This is the story of how I got my revenge. Lily is the most important person in my world. She has beautiful brown curly hair and bright green eyes that shine when she laughs. She loves her little toy rabbit named Bunny. She carries it everywhere. Lily likes to sing songs and draw pictures. She is sweet and innocent and trusting. She believes everyone is good. We moved to Willow Grove Estate 6 months ago in May 2024. I thought it would be a perfect place for Lily to grow up. The houses are nice and clean. There is a beautiful park where children can play safely. There are good schools nearby. The estate agent told me it was a friendly community where families looked out for each other. I was completely wrong about that. Karen Davies is 48 years old. She has short blonde hair that she keeps perfectly styled. She always wears expensive designer clothes. She drives a white BMW. She is the chairwoman of our residents association. This means she makes rules for everyone who lives in our neighborhood. She carries a clipboard with her everywhere she goes. She acts like she owns the entire estate. From the very first day we moved to Willow Grove, Karen did not like us. She did not like that I am a single mother raising a child alone. She did not like that I work long hours to support my family. She did not like that Lily sometimes played outside and made normal child noises. She did not like that we were not wealthy like the other families. Karen always found problems with everything we did. She complained that Lily's toys were cluttering our front garden. She said my second-hand car was an eyesore. She sent me official letters complaining about tiny things like my recycling bin being 2 inches too far from the curb. She made our daily life very difficult and stressful. But I never imagined she would try to hurt my innocent child. On this cold Saturday morning in November, I was outside cleaning my blue Ford car in our driveway. The weather was getting colder as winter approached. I could see my breath making small clouds in the chilly air. Lily was playing nearby on our front lawn with her beloved toy rabbit. She was singing a little song to herself, completely happy and carefree. "Mummy, I'm getting cold," Lily said, running over to me with her arms wrapped around herself for warmth. "Come here, sweetheart," I said lovingly, putting down my cleaning cloth and picking her up in my arms. "Let's get you warmed up." I carried my precious daughter to our car and opened the back door. I helped her climb into her car seat and buckled her seatbelt safely. She hugged her toy rabbit close to her chest for comfort. "Can I stay inside the car while you finish cleaning, Mummy?" she asked politely. "It's nice and warm in here." "Of course, baby girl," I said, leaning down to kiss her soft forehead. "I'll be right outside working. I won't go anywhere." I gently closed the back door and walked around to the rear of the car to get my bucket of soapy water and cleaning supplies from the trunk. That's when I heard the sound of angry, heavy footsteps approaching fast on our concrete driveway. Karen Davies was marching toward me like an angry soldier going into battle. Her face was bright red with rage. Her eyes were filled with hate. She was gripping her clipboard so tightly that her knuckles were white. She looked like she wanted to hurt someone. "Sarah Thompson," she shouted at the top of her lungs. "What exactly do you think you're doing now?" I turned around, genuinely confused by her sudden appearance and hostile attitude. "I'm just cleaning my car, Karen. Is there some kind of problem?" "Your disgusting car is 6 whole inches over the designated parking line," she screamed, pulling out a metal tape measure from her expensive handbag. I've warned you about this exact same violation multiple times before. You people never listen to anything. Karen always said you people when she talked about single mothers like me. She said it with such disgust and hatred. It made my blood boil, but I always tried my best to stay calm and polite around her, especially when Lily was nearby. Karen, please try to calm down, I said, keeping my voice steady and reasonable. If my car is really over the line, I can easily move it right now. It's far too late for that pathetic excuse, she yelled even louder. I'm going to teach you and your brat a lesson that you'll never, ever forget. Before I could react or stop her, Karen suddenly sprinted toward my car like a crazy person. She yanked open the driver's side door and grabbed my car keys from the front seat where I had carelessly left them while I was cleaning. Karen, give me back my keys right now. I demanded firmly, but she was already pressing the electronic lock button on my key fob. Click. All the car doors locked automatically with my 5-year-old daughter trapped inside. My heart completely stopped beating for a moment. Pure terror flooded through my entire body. Lily was locked inside the car and I had no way to get her out. Karen, unlock this car immediately. I shouted desperately, running toward her with panic in my voice. My little daughter is inside there. But Karen was not finished with her evil plan. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out something small and metallic that glinted in the sunlight. It was a silver cigarette lighter. My eyes went wide with absolute horror as I realized what this monster was planning to do to my innocent child. Maybe this will finally teach you to follow the rules like everyone else, she said with the most evil, twisted smile I had ever seen on a human face. Karen opened the driver's side door, which was still unlocked from the outside. She threw the lighter onto the front passenger seat where I had placed a stack of old newspapers that I was planning to take to the recycling center later that day. The lighter struck the dry newspapers and immediately burst into bright orange flames. Karen, no. Stop. I screamed at the top of my lungs, but it was too late. She slammed the driver's door shut with tremendous force and calmly walked away as if nothing had happened. Fire began spreading rapidly across the front seat of my car. Thick black smoke started filling the interior. My precious little girl was trapped inside with the growing flames. Mummy! Mummy! Help me! Lily's terrified voice came through the car windows, high-pitched and filled with pure terror. I ran to the car as fast as my legs could carry me and pressed my face against the glass window. My beautiful daughter was crying hysterically, her tiny hands pressed flat against the window from the inside. The smoke was getting thicker and darker every second. The orange flames were growing bigger and spreading toward the back seat where my baby was trapped. Hold on, sweetheart. Mummy is coming to save you. I shouted as loudly as possible, desperately pulling on the door handle with all my strength. But it wouldn't budge even slightly. The car was electronically locked tight as a prison. I looked around frantically for Karen, hoping she would come to her senses and unlock the car. She was walking away very slowly down the street, her back turned to us completely. She wasn't even looking back at the horror she had created. Karen Davies! I screamed with every ounce of air in my lungs. Unlock this car right now. My daughter is going to die. But that evil woman just kept walking at the same leisurely pace. She didn't care that an innocent child was about to burn alive because of her actions. The thick smoke was getting much worse inside the car. Lily was coughing violently now, her small face turning red from lack of clean air. Tears were streaming down her cheeks as she banged her little fists against the window. I can't breathe, Mummy, she cried desperately. The smoke hurts. Please help me. My heart was completely breaking into a million pieces. I had to do something immediately or my daughter was going to die. I ran as fast as I could to our front garden and grabbed the largest brick I could find from our flower bed border. I sprinted back to the car and began smashing it against the driver's side window with all the strength I possessed. The safety glass cracked but didn't break completely. I hit it again with even more force. And again. And again. Help! Somebody please help us. I screamed at the top of my lungs, hoping any neighbor would hear me and come running. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the window completely shattered into thousands of tiny pieces. Sharp glass fell everywhere, cutting deep into my hands and arms, but I didn't care about the pain. I reached through the jagged opening and tried desperately to unlock the doors from inside. My hands were shaking so violently from terror and adrenaline that I could barely control them. The thick smoke was choking me and burning my eyes. The intense heat from the spreading fire was scorching my face and arms. "Mummy, I'm so scared." Lily sobbed from the back seat, her voice getting weaker. "I know, baby girl. Try to get down on the floor where there's less smoke." I yelled back, still fumbling frantically for the unlock button inside the car. That's when I heard the beautiful sound of running footsteps approaching rapidly. Mr. Patel, our kind neighbor from across the street, was sprinting toward us carrying a red fire extinguisher from his garage. "Sarah! Get back away from the car," he shouted urgently. I jumped backward just as Mr. Patel aimed the fire extinguisher through the broken window and began spraying thick white chemical foam all over the flames. The fire started to die down significantly under the powerful spray. "The back door! Help me get to the back door!" I yelled over the noise of the extinguisher. Mr. Patel continued spraying the foam while I reached back through the broken window, my arms getting cut even more by the remaining glass shards. Finally, my fingers found the electronic unlock button and I pressed it with all my might. Click! The most beautiful sound in the world, all the doors unlocked simultaneously. I ran around to the back door and yanked it open so hard I nearly broke it off its hinges. Lily was curled up on the floor between the seats, coughing violently and crying. I quickly unbuckled her car seat straps and pulled her out of that death trap into my arms. "Mummy," she sobbed, wrapping her tiny arms around my neck and holding on like her life depended on it. "You're safe now, my precious baby." "You're completely safe," I whispered through my own tears, holding her tighter than I had ever held anything in my life. My hands were bleeding badly from all the broken glass, but I didn't feel any pain. All that mattered was that Lily was alive and breathing. More neighbors were running over now, drawn by all the screaming and commotion. Mrs. Carter, a sweet elderly lady who lived next door, was crying as she watched us. The Khan family from down the street had come outside too, their faces showing absolute shock and horror at what they were witnessing. "Someone needs to call 999 immediately," Mr. Patel shouted to everyone. "We need the fire department and police here right now." I looked around desperately for Karen, wondering if she had finally realized the magnitude of what she had done. She was still standing at the far end of our street, about 50 yards away, watching everything unfold like she was observing some mildly interesting television program. Her expression was completely calm and emotionless, as if she hadn't just attempted to murder an innocent 5-year-old child. The fire department arrived exactly 7 minutes later. They quickly extinguished the remaining flames and thoroughly checked Lily for any injuries. By some miracle of God, she was physically okay. She had inhaled some smoke, but the paramedics said her lungs were clear and functioning normally. She had no burns on her skin. But the psychological damage was already done. My car was completely destroyed, the entire interior was burned black and melted beyond recognition. More importantly, my sweet, trusting little girl was now traumatized and terrified. The innocence had been stolen from her eyes. 2 police officers arrived shortly after the fire department, 1 male and 1 female, both appearing to be in their 30s. They approached me with serious expressions and notepads ready. "Ma'am, we need you to tell us exactly what happened here today," the female officer said professionally. "Karen Davies deliberately locked my 5-year-old daughter inside our car and then threw a lit cigarette lighter onto newspapers to start a fire," I told them, my voice still shaking with a combination of rage and leftover terror. "She intentionally tried to murder my child." Both officers wrote down every word I said. Then they walked across the street to interview Karen, who was still standing in the same spot, looking completely composed and confident. I watched from our driveway as Karen spoke to the police officers for about 15 minutes. She appeared very calm and reasonable, occasionally pointing in my direction and shaking her head as if I was some kind of crazy person making up wild stories. When the officers returned to me, I could tell from their expressions that something was wrong. "Ma'am, We've spoken extensively with Ms. Davies about your allegations, the male officer said carefully. She completely denies throwing any kind of lighter or incendiary device into your vehicle. What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She's lying through her teeth. I saw her do it with my own eyes. According to Ms. Davies, you must have left the lighter inside the car yourself, the female officer continued. She suggests that you're trying to falsely blame her because of some kind of personal dispute between you two. That's absolutely not true. I shouted, feeling my anger rising to dangerous levels. She hates my family. She's been harassing and terrorizing us for months. This is just the latest escalation in her campaign against us. Do you have any concrete proof of what you're claiming? The male officer asked. Were there any witnesses who actually saw her throw the lighter into your car? I looked around at all the neighbors who had gathered. Mr. Patel had witnessed the fire and helped save Lily, but he had come running from across the street after Karen had already walked away from the car. All the other neighbors had arrived even later, drawn by the smoke and my screaming. The lighter will have her fingerprints all over it, I said desperately, grasping for any evidence. The female officer shook her head sadly. I'm afraid the lighter was too severely damaged by the fire. The lab won't be able to recover any usable fingerprints from it. I felt like the entire world was collapsing around me. This evil woman had tried to kill my daughter, and she was going to get away with it completely. Look, ma'am, the male officer said more gently, obviously seeing my distress. We understand that you're extremely upset about what happened. But without any physical evidence or eyewitness testimony, this becomes a case of your word against hers. We simply cannot arrest someone based solely on accusations. They gave Karen a verbal warning about being more careful around vehicles and left. A warning. She had attempted to commit murder, and all she received was a meaningless warning. That night, I held Lily close while she cried inconsolably in her little bed. She kept asking me over and over why the mean lady had wanted to hurt her. How do you explain pure evil to an innocent 5-year-old child? How do you make sense of something that has no logical explanation? Will she try to hurt me again, Mummy? Lily whispered in the darkness, her voice barely audible. No, sweetheart, I promised her, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. Mummy will never let anyone hurt you ever again. But deep inside my heart, I was burning with a rage so intense it scared me. Karen Davies thought she had won this round. She thought she could terrorize my family and attempt to murder my child without facing any consequences whatsoever. She had no idea how wrong she was about that. The very next morning, I began developing my plan for justice. As a child protection officer with years of experience, I knew exactly how to investigate dangerous predators. I understood how to build solid legal cases against people who harm children. I was skilled at gathering evidence and finding patterns of abusive behavior. Karen Davies was about to discover that she had chosen to mess with exactly the wrong person and the wrong family. My first step was to start documenting absolutely everything. I purchased a thick notebook and began writing down every single interaction I had ever had with Karen Davies. Every complaint she had made, every threat she had issued, every hostile look she had given us. I recorded precise dates, exact times, and word-for-word quotes of everything she had said to me. Then I began quietly reaching out to other neighbors throughout Willow Grove Estate. I was very careful to be discreet about my inquiries, so Karen wouldn't suspect what I was doing behind the scenes. What I discovered during my investigation completely shocked me and made me realize just how dangerous this woman really was. Mrs. Carter, the sweet elderly lady who lived right next door to us, told me a heartbreaking story. Karen had imposed a fine of £300 on her for planting beautiful roses in her own front garden without first obtaining written permission from the Residents' Association. She actually made me cry, Mrs. Carter confided in me sadly. At my age, crying over flowers that brought me joy. She's a truly cruel and heartless woman, Sarah. The Kahn family, who had moved away from Willow Grove the previous year, made a special trip back to visit some friends. When I spoke with them, they revealed that Karen had called social services and made completely false reports claiming they were neglecting and abusing their children. Every single accusation was a malicious lie, Mr. Khan told me with obvious pain still in his voice. But we were forced to prove our innocence and endure humiliating investigations. It was one of the most stressful and embarrassing experiences of our lives.
I began secretly recording my conversations with neighbors who were willing to go on record about Karen's harassment. I saved every single email and letter she had ever sent me. I took photographs of her threatening notes and official complaints. I was building an extensive dossier that clearly showed a dangerous pattern of escalating behavior. At my job with the city council, I carefully and ethically used my professional connections to gather more information. I spoke confidentially with Detective Sergeant Rachel Holmes, who worked closely with our Child Protection Unit on various cases. I asked her to look into Karen's background and history, completely off the record. What Rachel discovered was deeply disturbing and painted a picture of a serial predator. Karen had official complaints filed against her for harassment in 3 different neighborhoods where she had previously lived. She had been terminated from 2 separate jobs for bullying and intimidating her coworkers. There was even a legal restraining order that had been issued against her in 2018 by a former colleague she had been stalking. "She's what we call a serial bully," Rachel explained to me during a private meeting. "The behavioral pattern is crystal clear when you look at all the evidence together. She systematically targets vulnerable people, single mothers, elderly residents, ethnic minorities, anyone she perceives as weak or different. She seeks out positions of authority and then ruthlessly abuses that power to make their lives miserable." But despite all this background information, we still needed concrete proof of her specific attempt to murder Lily. For the next 2 months, I continued methodically gathering evidence while Karen kept up her harassment campaign against us. She was completely unaware that I was building an airtight legal case against her. She sent me several more official letters demanding that I pay the Residents Association money for damaging the estate's reputation with the car fire incident. She also attempted to have me expelled from the Residents Association entirely. At the next monthly association meeting in January 2025, Karen stood up and delivered a vicious public speech designed to humiliate me in front of all our neighbors. "Sarah Thompson represents a clear and present danger to our peaceful community," she announced dramatically to the assembled residents. "Her obvious negligence and carelessness caused a dangerous fire that could easily have spread to other homes and endangered all of our families. Her child runs completely wild with absolutely no parental supervision whatsoever. Frankly, she simply does not belong in Willow Grove Estate." I stood up slowly, my heart pounding with nervous energy but my voice remaining calm and steady. "Karen, you were the one who locked my innocent daughter inside that car. You were the one who threw the lighter onto those newspapers. You deliberately tried to kill a 5-year-old child." The entire room fell completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Karen's face turned bright red with anger and embarrassment. "That's a complete and utter lie," she shouted defensively. "You have absolutely no proof whatsoever of those ridiculous accusations." "Not yet," I said, looking directly into her eyes with complete confidence. "But I will have proof very soon." Karen laughed mockingly. "You're clearly delusional, Sarah. Everyone in this room knows you're an unfit mother who can't properly care for her own child." But I noticed something very important happening around the room. Several neighbors were looking at Karen with new suspicion and doubt in their eyes. They were beginning to remember their own negative experiences with her harassment and bullying. The seeds of doubt about her character were finally being planted in people's minds. That's exactly when I received the breakthrough I had been hoping and praying for. Mr. Patel came to my house one evening in early February, looking nervous and excited at the same time. "Sarah, I need to show you something very important," he said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one else could hear us. "I installed a high-definition security camera above my garage last month. I was getting tired of Karen constantly complaining about my cooking, so I wanted to have video proof of my own innocence if she tried to cause more trouble." My heart began racing with anticipation. What exactly did you discover? I found the footage from the day your car caught fire, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. My camera caught absolutely everything that happened. I could barely breathe. Everything? He nodded emphatically. Karen taking your keys from the car. Karen throwing the lighter onto the newspapers. Karen locking all the doors with your daughter trapped inside. Karen calmly walking away while your little girl screamed for help. Every single detail is captured in perfect high-definition video. Tears of relief and joy filled my eyes. After months of frustration and feeling helpless, I finally had the concrete evidence I needed to destroy Karen Davies. Mr. Patel transferred the video file to my laptop computer that same evening. I watched the footage over and over again, my hands shaking with emotion. It was absolutely perfect evidence, crystal clear, high-definition video that showed Karen's attempted murder in complete detail from start to finish. I immediately called Detective Sergeant Rachel Holmes at home. I've got her, Rachel, I told her excitedly. I finally have the proof we need. Rachel came to my house the next morning and watched the security camera footage with me. Her jaw clenched tighter and tighter as she witnessed Karen's deliberate attempt to murder my daughter. This is attempted murder in the first degree, Sarah, she said grimly when the video ended. With this evidence, we can arrest her immediately and she'll definitely go to prison. No, I said firmly, surprising her with my response. Not yet. I want to do this exactly right. I want the entire community to see what kind of monster she really is before she gets arrested. I had developed a comprehensive plan that would not only ensure Karen's conviction, but would also completely destroy her reputation and power in our community forever. I spent the following week carefully preparing every detail. I contacted every single neighbor that Karen had ever bullied, harassed, or threatened over the years. I invited them all to attend a special emergency meeting of the Residents Association. I told them it was finally time to take back control of our community from a dangerous tyrant. The meeting was scheduled for February 15, 2025. I rented the community center and set up a professional projector system. I prepared a detailed presentation that would expose Karen's years of systematic abuse and terrorism. But I was very careful not to reveal the true purpose of the meeting to Karen herself. I simply told her it was going to be a general community discussion about neighborhood safety and security. She eagerly agreed to attend, probably thinking it would be another opportunity for her to publicly attack and humiliate me. On the night of the meeting, the community center was completely packed. Every family that Karen had ever terrorized was there, along with many other concerned residents. Mrs. Carter sat in the front row with determination blazing in her elderly eyes. The Khan family had driven back from their new home specifically to attend. Mr. Patel sat near the back, nervous but ready to support the truth. Karen arrived precisely on time, carrying her ever-present clipboard and wearing an expensive new outfit. She looked around the room with confusion, obviously surprised by the large turnout. "What exactly is all this about?" she asked me suspiciously. "You'll find out very soon," I replied calmly. I walked to the front of the room and faced the crowd of nearly 50 people. My heart was pounding with nervous energy, but I felt stronger and more determined than I had ever felt in my entire life. This was the moment I had been working toward for months. "Thank you all for coming here tonight," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the silent room. "We are gathered here to discuss the leadership of our Residents Association. Specifically, we are here to discuss the reign of terror that Karen Davies has inflicted upon our community." Karen shot up from her chair, her face immediately turning red with rage. "What is this supposed to be? Some kind of coordinated ambush against me?" "Please sit down, Karen," I said firmly, my voice remaining calm and controlled. "You're about to see exactly what kind of person you really are, and what you've done to innocent people." I turned on the projector, and the large screen filled with the crystal-clear security camera footage from November 12. The room became so quiet you could hear people breathing. Everyone watched in stunned silence as Karen grabbed my car keys. They watched as she threw the lighter onto the pile of newspapers. They watched as she locked the doors with my 5-year-old daughter trapped inside. They watched as she calmly walked away while flames began spreading through the car. And then they heard Lily's terrified screams echoing through the speakers. The sound of my daughter's pure terror and desperation filled the entire room. I saw Mrs. Carter put both hands over her mouth in horror. Mr. Khan's wife began crying openly. Even some of the strongest men in the room had to look away from the screen, unable to watch a child being tortured. But Karen just sat there with a pale face, still trying to look defiant even though she had been caught red-handed. When the video finally ended, the room remained completely silent for what felt like an eternity. Then Mrs. Carter slowly stood up, her frail body shaking with emotion. "You absolute monster," she whispered, her voice filled with disgust. "You tried to murder an innocent little child. She's lying about everything." Karen shouted desperately. "That video has obviously been faked somehow. The police have already verified and authenticated this footage," I said calmly. "It's completely real, Karen. And there's so much more evidence of your crimes." I spent the next hour methodically presenting all the evidence I had gathered. I read aloud Karen's threatening letters and emails. I played audio recordings of her verbal threats and harassment. I showed photographs of her vandalism and property damage. I shared detailed testimony from every family she had bullied and terrorized over the years. The room gradually filled with an atmosphere of pure anger. These people had been living in fear of Karen Davies for years, but now they were finally united against their common enemy. "We are voting tonight," I announced to the crowd, "to immediately remove Karen Davies as chairwoman of the Residents Association and to permanently ban her from holding any position of authority in our community." The vote was completely unanimous. Every single person in that room voted to strip Karen of all her power. Karen stood up, her entire body shaking with uncontrolled rage. "You'll all regret this decision," she screamed at the top of her lungs. "I will make every one of your lives absolutely miserable." "No, Karen," I said quietly, my voice cutting through her hysteria. "You won't do anything to anyone ever again. Because you're going to prison for a very long time." As if I had planned it perfectly, Detective Sergeant Rachel Holmes entered the community center at that exact moment, accompanied by 2 uniformed police officers. "Karen Davies," Rachel announced in an official voice that carried throughout the room. "You are under arrest for attempted murder, arson, and child endangerment." The entire room erupted in cheers and applause as the officers placed handcuffs on Karen's wrists. She was shouting obscenities and making threats, but nobody was listening to her anymore. Her reign of terror was finally over. As they led her toward the door, Karen turned back to glare at me one final time. "This isn't over between us," she snarled with pure hatred in her voice. "Yes, it is," I replied with complete confidence. "It's completely over." Karen's criminal trial began in May 2025. The courtroom was packed every single day with residents from Willow Grove Estate, all there to witness justice finally being served. I sat in the front row with Lily, who was now 6 years old and much braver than she had been on that terrible day in November. The prosecution presented the security camera footage to the jury on the first day of testimony. I watched the faces of all 12 jurors as they witnessed Karen deliberately locking my daughter in a burning car. Several jurors wiped tears from their eyes. One middle-aged man actually looked physically sick and had to look away from the screen. Karen's defense attorney tried his best to create reasonable doubt. He argued that she was suffering from severe stress and mental health issues. He claimed that she didn't fully understand the potential consequences of her actions. He begged the jury to show mercy and recommend treatment rather than prison. But the evidence against her was absolutely overwhelming and undeniable. The video footage was crystal clear and showed premeditated attempted murder. The testimony from dozens of neighbors established a clear pattern of escalating harassment and violence. The background investigation revealed her history of bullying and stalking in other communities. When it was my turn to testify, I took the witness stand and looked Karen directly in her cold eyes as I described the absolute terror of watching my innocent daughter trapped in that burning car. I told the jury about the months of systematic harassment, threats, and psychological torture that had led up to that day. She didn't just try to physically harm my daughter, I said, my voice strong and clear. She tried to destroy our entire family's sense of safety and security. She terrorized our neighborhood for years, targeting anyone who didn't meet her twisted standards of perfection. She is a dangerous predator who should never be allowed to harm another child or family. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before reaching their verdict. When they returned to the courtroom, their faces showed the gravity of their decision. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty, the foreman announced clearly. On the charge of arson in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of child endangerment in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. Karen's face went completely white. Her hands began trembling uncontrollably. For the first time since I had known her, I saw genuine fear and panic in her eyes. The judge sentenced her to 12 years in state prison without the possibility of parole. Your actions were not only cruel and calculated, but they could have easily resulted in the horrible death of an innocent 5-year-old child, the judge said sternly. You have systematically terrorized an entire community through years of harassment, bullying, and intimidation. Society needs to be protected from predators like you for as long as possible. As the bailiffs led Karen away in handcuffs and leg shackles, I felt an enormous weight finally lift from my shoulders. The nightmare was truly over. Justice had been served. After Karen's conviction and imprisonment, Willow Grove Estate began the long process of healing from years of trauma. The residents unanimously elected Sweet Mrs. Carter as the new chairwoman of the Residents Association. She immediately changed the focus from punishment and control to community building and mutual support. We started organizing regular neighborhood barbecues and potluck dinners. Children began playing freely in the streets again without fear of harassment. Families started helping each other with groceries, babysitting, and home repairs. The Kahn family even decided to move back to Willow Grove, saying they missed the true sense of community that was finally emerging. Lily slowly but steadily recovered from her psychological trauma. She had recurring nightmares for several months, but with professional counseling and unlimited love and support, she gradually got better. She made many new friends at school and her bright, joyful smile returned. The sparkle came back to her beautiful green eyes. I started a support group for parents and families who had been victims of Karen's harassment and bullying. We met weekly to help each other heal from the emotional damage and rebuild our confidence and sense of security. We also worked together to make sure that no one would ever again be able to terrorize our community the way Karen had. The Residents Association completely rewrote all the rules and bylaws to prevent any one person from accumulating too much power over others. We created a system of checks and balances, with multiple committees sharing decision-making responsibilities. We established clear procedures for residents to safely report harassment or abuse without fear of retaliation. 6 months after Karen's sentencing, I was working peacefully in our front garden when Lily came running up to me with pure excitement on her face. "Look, Mummy," she said breathlessly, holding up her finger. A beautiful orange and black butterfly had landed there and was resting calmly. "It's absolutely beautiful, sweetheart," I said, smiling at the simple joy on my daughter's face. "It's not afraid of me at all," she said with wonder in her voice. "It trusts me completely." I watched my precious daughter, so gentle and innocent and pure, and felt my heart overflow with happiness and gratitude. Karen Davies had tried her best to break our spirits and destroy our lives, but she had failed completely. We were stronger than ever before. Mr. Patel came over with a delicious homemade curry to share for dinner. Mrs. Carter brought fresh flowers from her beautiful garden. The Khan children played happily with Lily in our front yard. This is what a real community was supposed to look like, people caring for each other and supporting each other through good times and bad. That evening, as I tucked Lily into her bed, she looked up at me with those bright green eyes that I loved so much. "Mummy, I'm so happy that we live here," she said softly. "I feel completely safe now." "Me too, baby girl," I whispered, leaning down to kiss her forehead. "Me too." As I turned off the lights and closed her bedroom door, I thought about everything our family had endured and overcome. The fear, the pain, the long fight for justice, it had all led us to this moment of perfect peace and security. Karen Davies had tried to destroy us, but instead she had only made us stronger. She had brought our community closer together. She had shown all of us that when good people stand united against evil, justice will always prevail in the end. 2 years later, I received a letter that made me realize the full impact of our victory. It was from another neighborhood in a different city, where Karen had lived and terrorized families before moving to Willow Grove. They had heard about our successful fight against her and wanted to learn how we had finally stopped her reign of terror. 2 years later, I received a letter that made me realize the full impact of our victory. It was from another neighborhood in a different city, where Karen had lived and terrorized families before moving to Willow Grove. They had heard about our successful fight against her and wanted to learn how we had finally stopped her reign of terror. I wrote back and shared our complete story with them. I explained that bullies and predators can be defeated when good people work together with courage and determination. I told them that evidence and truth are always more powerful than fear and intimidation. Today, Lily is 8 years old. She still carries her beloved toy rabbit sometimes, but now she also has many wonderful friends and a community full of people who love and protect her. She plays in the park without any fear. She laughs and sings and fills our home with pure joy every single day. Sometimes people ask me if I regret moving to Willow Grove Estate. They wonder if I wish we had never encountered Karen Davies and all the trauma she caused. My answer is always no. Meeting Karen was the most terrifying experience of my life. What she did to Lily was absolutely unforgivable and could never be excused. But fighting against her and ultimately defeating her taught me something incredibly important about myself and about life. It taught me that I am much stronger and braver than I ever imagined possible. It taught me that good people can overcome any evil when they work together with determination. It taught me that justice is always worth fighting for, no matter how difficult or dangerous the battle becomes. Most importantly, it taught Lily that she is safe and protected. That there are good people in this world who will always stand up for what is right. That bullies can be stopped and defeated. That she never has to live in fear of anyone or anything. Karen Davies tried to murder my daughter and destroy our family. But in the end, all she accomplished was making us stronger, braver, and more united than ever before. And that, without any doubt, is the sweetest revenge of all.